confident in your ability to put something like this together safely, I will just take it to a bike shop and have them put it together. All right, enough said. Today I'm going to do a complete test and review of this Sohamo S3 48 volt 750 watt hub motor electric bicycle. But before we hit the road, I'm going to have to get a microphone so the wind doesn't mess up my sound. Step number one to get this thing rolling is put the key in the on position. This key must remain in the bike in the on position for the bike to function. Then we're going to want to hold this power button until the screen turns on. I have tried to put this thing in miles per hour, but every time I do it, it defaults back to kilometers per hour. I'm not sure why that is. And also every time I turn it off and on, it defaults back to number one on the pedal assist mode, which isn't a huge deal, but you know, it's something that I would like to just leave it on pedal assist mode number 5. I do feel a little naked without my sunglasses on, so I'm gonna go back and get those because they just got back here.
Having fun?
Yeah, just messing around with this bike. All right, so that's better. Love having my sunglasses on when I'm making these videos. This is not conducive to filming a YouTube video, but the throttle and the front brake are on the same side of the bike. Normally I like to have the throttle on this side, just like on a motorcycle, and the back brake is on this side as well. That way if I'm going one-handed, I hit the brakes and the throttle, it doesn't just throw me over the handlebars. It's not something I really need to be too worried about, but since I'm riding one-handed and holding my phone in the other hand, it is something that I need to take into consideration. For test number 1, I just want to see if I can ride straight up this hill with just the throttle and no pedal. The hill's about 100 yards long and it sweeps up and then flattens out towards the top. It's a pretty decent hill. That wasn't too bad. On the steepest part of the hill, I did bog down to about 4 miles per hour, and I held that pretty much the entire way up. If I was pedaling just a little bit, I would have been able to keep this thing moving probably around 10 miles per hour. Overall, for a 750 watt motor, which also is the maximum legal size in most places here in the United States, it performed okay. So maybe it's just my lack of knowledge on the display on this bike, but I've been riding it for about 2 weeks now, and the odometer resets every time I get off the bike. So right now it says 0, and it pretty much has said 0 every time I've gotten on it. And I've had to recharge it several times, so I think that I have probably around 200 miles overall between myself and my kids riding the bike around. Miles on the bike. How does it feel so far?
It feels really good and it's pretty fast.
So here I am with just a little bit of pedaling, adding just a little bit of torque, and I'm hitting about 10 miles per hour, no problems up this hill. I'm not breaking a sweat at all. This Sohamo electric bicycle comes equipped with a 48 volt 20 amp hour battery. The 7-speed shifter provides plenty of gears for those rare times that you'll need to pedal the bicycle. Increasing visibility is a 48 volt quad LED light plus a fully functional brake light. The brake levers include a kill switch and sufficient stopping power for the mechanical disc brakes. The throttle is responsive and gives you just the boost you'll need to get going. The robust saddle will have your buns resting on cloud 9 as long as you're not hitting bumps, as the bicycle has no rear suspension. Finally, the factory equipped rack is sturdy and ready for baggage. Now let's check out some tips to help you assemble the bicycle. So the package handlers, we're lifting it by those straps, and you can see that those dug into the box a little bit, but it doesn't appear to have damaged the box in any other way besides those two straps. Ugh. Hopefully they package this thing good enough to keep it from getting damaged during shipping. If not, I'm sure I'll know within about 3 minutes when I get the rest of this box opened. Open right up. All right, so let's see if this thing really is as heavy as it feels in the box. Got some foam. And where am I gonna grab this from? Not by the battery, of course, right? All right, I gotta get some of these things out of here first. Probably the pedals. Oh, perfect. I should probably take care of that box, at least for a few days, just in case something goes wrong with this bicycle while I'm testing it. That way, if I need to, I can return the bike. The first thing I'm noticing as I take this bike out of the box is that it has some Beefy tires, which is gonna help me with this off-road terrain that I have here. And it looks like all the important electronics are housed inside of this metal box, so if I bottom out or hit something, it's not gonna get destroyed. There it is, completely unboxed. Let me clean up my mess so I can get it assembled. It's nothing too major, but this bike does require a little more assembly than I'm used to for bikes like this. I have to install the disc brake. It's not a huge deal because I have the tools to do this, and the tools might also be in this little tool bag here. And the benefit of this is that the disc did not get bent in shipping. But before I install this disc, let me see if I even have the tools I need in this bag. This bag has a decent set of metric tools. I don't see the Torx bit that I would usually use for a disc brake. And of course the disc brake does use Allen keys. So let's get the disc brake installed. The disc is directional, so I'm gonna have to make sure that I put it on the right way relative to the rotation of the wheel. So the total assembly time for the rotor took me about 5 minutes, and that included threading the screws and then going through and tightening them by hand with this 4mm Allen key. This kickstand and these screws came in a slightly loose packaging, and I had to look in the box. And I had to look in the box to find the screws and the washers. So make sure when you open your parts kit that you look inside and check to see that there isn't anything hidden under the flaps of that box. Now I'm gonna get this kickstand set up so that I can get this thing standing normally and assembled the rest of the way. The disc brake rotor nuts had thread locker on them. I'd like to see some thread locker on these kickstand bolts as well, because as you're bouncing down the road, these bolts can easily become loose. The good thing is the kickstand does have a little tension as I'm tightening those bolts, so they don't feel like they'll be very jiggly. Time for that front tire. To install the wheel, first I'm gonna put this axle on. And I'm gonna put the axle on so that this lever is on the side opposite of the disc brake, so that when I'm tightening this up, I'm not bending the disc brake. Luckily this thing came with some tools because I have everything I need to get this ghost axle off so I can get this wheel installed. All right, wheels installed. The bike holds itself up. So at first I thought there might have been a rear suspension on the seat post, but that's just some kind of bushing, I think, to keep you from smashing your hands, you know, if you're moving the seat around. This is a perfect granny seat with just the right amount of suspension in it, and it has a single axle. If you love puzzles, you're really gonna love installing the seat post. It does go together. It isn't super complicated, but it is kind of a puzzle. So if you're not comfortable doing something like this, I would definitely recommend taking this to a bicycle shop to have them help you with assembly. All right, this seat took me a few minutes to get together. There's a little lever in the center here that you have to guide through the center rails of the seat and then put the bolt through. And now, if I need to, I'll be able to move that seat out of the way while the bike's folding. Installing the steering column isn't super complicated, but I want to put it in so that this item can be tightened into this collar, and when I put the handlebars on, the handlebars will end up straight. So I'm gonna try to eyeball this, and I'll get it just tight enough, and then I'll put the handlebars on, adjust it, and then tighten it the rest of the way. Time for the handlebars, and then I'll tighten up that steering column the rest of the way. Otherwise, I'll never get it straightened out, and that'll be a huge pain. If you don't tighten that thing up properly, you could possibly pull your handlebars out while you're going down the road. And nobody wants to ride around like ghost riders. So I'm going to emphasize again, if you're not confident in your ability to put something like this together safely, I would just take it to a bike shop and have them put it together. All right, enough said. So the reason you want to be able to eject yourself off the seat like this is so that if you wanted to, you could store your bicycle somewhere and pull this battery out so you can charge it. It's a 960 watt hour battery, so almost a kilowatt hour in this thing, which is a pretty substantial size for a bicycle battery. This is taking a little longer to assemble than I'd like. I've gotten a couple of these bikes where the fenders, at least the back fender, is already installed. I know there's like a labor concern when you're building stuff. How much do you want the consumer to do versus how much do you want to do at the factory? I feel like the rear fender and the rear rack could come on the bike assembled already, but the packaging wasn't too big, so maybe there's like a packaging cost savings versus packaging aspect to this bike. The more I have to do as the consumer, the less appealing the bicycle is to me. This little nut on the front of the rear fender has been the most frustrating nut to get to. It's got this bar that guides the battery in, blocking it. The good thing is the bolt is fixed to the frame, but the bad thing is I'm gonna have to turn this nut probably another 20 times before it's seated properly. Perfect. That's where a ratcheting wrench would definitely come in handy. Now that I've got all those other bolts installed, this one's super easy. Perfect. I was definitely not planning to spend an hour putting this bike together this morning, but that's how it's working out so far. So I've got the bike put together. I'm gonna plug it in and go over all of the nuts and bolts one more time, and then I'll take it for a big ride. It is a folding bike, so I might as well try to at least fold it once. See how compact it can get when it's in its folded position. It's not too complicated, but it's something I recommend you try to do at least a few times so you can get the hang of it. And no matter how much you fold it, it is still gonna weigh around 70 pounds. So it's not exactly light, and I wouldn't plan on taking this up several flights of stairs unless you really had to. The folding function seems to be most suitable for putting it in the trunk of a vehicle, maybe once or twice a day, lifting it and setting it up. Not something like commuting on a train or anything like that. While the folding function may be useful for some, I recommend not folding it unless you absolutely have to. It's definitely doable, but it's kind of a job. Now this bike is marketed for someone 5'1" to 5'9". I have the seat in its lowest position and I'm just barely able to get both of my feet on the ground. So if you are on the shorter side of that range, this bike might be a little bit too tall for you. Even with the step-through frame, it's still a little on the tall side. And because this bike is designed to be compact and folding, the handlebars are a little narrow, so on some of these dirt trails that I ride on, the bike can get a little squirrely. It's got these beefy off-road tires, and the suspension up front is okay for hitting some of these trails, but there's no suspension in the back, so I would recommend using this more for an urban or suburban environment than a country backroads environment. And the bicycle is rated to get between 40 and 60 miles on a full state of charge. If you are using that maximum number 5 mode, you're only gonna get about 30 miles. To get that 60 mile state of charge, you are gonna have to run this on pedal assist 1 and do quite a bit of pedaling as you're riding the bike. Overall, the bike is a blast to ride, and I feel like for the purposes that it's designed, which is to be a compact, maybe something you throw in the back of your RV, you pull out when you get to your campsite and ride around for a few days, hit some more tame trails and ride around and enjoy your day. It does go around 10 miles per hour uphill with just a little bit of your assistance in pedaling. So if you're not trying to go out and get insanely sweaty and get an intense amount of cardio, but you want to go enjoy yourself and get a little bit of exercise, something like this is perfect for those kind of environments. Only time will tell how good the quality of the bike is as I go through and put more miles on it. There are a couple of things that I'm having a hard time getting used to. First of all, the throttle is on the opposite side of what I'm used to, and I could probably take it off and put it on the side that I want it. but it might interfere with the shifter a little bit. And another thing I'd like to see out of the box is that rear fender and that rear rack already installed. I don't think it took up too much space in the box, and it's just one less step that I have to do to ride the bike out of the box. Overall, the bike is a blast to ride, and it's on the cheaper side of the bikes that I've tested in this range, coming in at around $1,000 with that extended range battery. They also have an option for $799, which has a slightly smaller battery and probably weighs a few pounds less with that smaller battery. If you'd like to find out more about the bike or its current price, if there's any sales going on, check out the link in the video description, and I'll see you on my next adventure.